What have you learned from Ray Peat that's been the most useful so far to you?
Yeah, I'll just answer this one quickly. If I hadn't already known about thyroid from other sources, it would be thyroid. Thyroid is a real game changer. And I see a lot of criticism of the followers of Ray Peat that they follow all his dietary advice and then they gain weight or they don't seem super healthy. And from what I've seen, they're not following his advice on thyroid. Like, to me, the thyroid is first. You don't eat as if you have a high metabolism before you actually have a high metabolism. I would say that's a mistake. And from having read Ray Peat's work, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that's exactly what he believed as well. And we've included some quotes about, how enthusiastically he recommended that almost everyone could do with some thyroid, and that you need to have enough thyroid to get you to a place where your metabolism is really fast. Now, he did also recommend that eating in a certain way would boost your metabolism, but I don't think that advice was ever meant to be separate from thyroid. So that would have been, but because I already knew that, the thing that's actually been for me is this distinction about serotonin not being beneficial. Now, if I were a woman, it would probably be the thing about estrogen not being beneficial. And I could see your eyes were literally lighting up when we were talking about that. But so for me, that hasn't, been as relevant. But the thing about serotonin has, because I had digestive problems for so long. So one of the things that I discovered from Ray Peat in his community is that irritable bowel syndrome and symptoms that are known as that is basically caused by excess serotonin, which is a very, very interesting discovery. And so if I go back to when I brought it to a medical doctor a few years ago, what did they say about IBS? Which is what they suspected me of. They never diagnosed it because I realized eventually they weren't able to help and stopped going to them. But they said that IBS is basically caused by, for some reason, so everyone has these kind of gases going on in their digestive tract, but for some reason, some people are like really sensitive to them and it causes them a lot of pain and discomfort. For other people, it's no big deal. Like, they don't even notice it. And so there's these people that are sensitive to it and they don't know why. Well, then, I was following one of Ray Peat's disciples, and he talked about how there's a particular drug called cyproheptadine, which is very powerfully reduces serotonin as well as antihistamine. And that when you give people with IBS that drug, for all of them in this particular study, it went away. All the symptoms of IBS. And conversely, there were studies that showed that when they give people SSRIs, which increase serotonin, in a lot of them, it created IBS. And so it seems like serotonin increases IBS and a lack of serotonin reduces IBS. Now, this is for all kinds of digestive issues as well. And so when we talked about last time whether it's good to have a lot of bacteria in your gut and how Dr. Peat did not believe it was. So other than endotoxin, which is the toxin that a lot of the bacteria in the gut, even the so-called okay ones, create, one of the other things that these bacteria in our gut create is histamine, which can, if it gets into the bloodstream, can lead to a lot of allergic reactions. And one of the other things that these bacteria create in our digestive tract is noradrenaline, which, if it gets into the bloodstream, can create a lot of anxiety. And one of the other things that these bacteria create in our digestive tract is serotonin, which, if it gets into the bloodstream, can have a kind of depressant effect on us, or also dissociative kind of effect. So it can make us sad, it can make us disassociated, it can make us feel emotionally flat, it can make us feel shut down, it can make us feel like we don't want to engage with the world. And at the extreme end, it can create either, paradoxically, like a feeling of learned helplessness, where we feel like everything is futile, kind of despair, depression, or it can actually go the complete opposite direction, and it often veers between the two. And it can go in the direction of like megalomania, narcissism, like I'm the best, I'm the greatest. And it's weird how often you'll go between them, and I guess in a bipolar kind of way. And but it's interesting. So this is one of the reasons I think why what's going on in the gut can strongly affect how you feel, because how you feel is the key thing. This really hit home to me recently because someone I know well, their parent is literally dying of the C word, really struggling, like terminal, and they had been advised all kinds of changes, not by me, but by someone, that they should make to their lifestyle, and they haven't followed any of them. And I said to them, it's interesting to me because, like, I can't imagine having a terminal diagnosis and not at least trying these things because of the amount of pain that I would be in, right? Because when you're in pain, you're willing to try anything, right? You'd be like, if someone goes, this witch doctor healed me, I'm like, oh, let's try it, right? Or this astrologer did, I'll try anything, right? Reiki, it doesn't matter how crazy it sounds when you're feeling fine. When you're in pain, you'll try anything. And they said to me, oh, no, person isn't feeling any pain. And I was like, God, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, you can be almost dying and you can feel fine. And then you can also be in a situation where you can go to the doctor and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. They probably think you're a hypochondriac, and yet you got all of these issues. And yet all the blood tests come out as fine. So it's interesting that how we feel does not necessarily correlate to how sick we are. So what does it correlate to? Well, I think it correlates to the level of hormones and neurotransmitters that are actually in our blood supply and in our nervous system. And so that is why the gut can so powerfully affect how we feel, because if we have these organisms in the gut creating loads and loads of serotonin, for instance, and there's like a microbiome test, like by a company called BiomeSite, which I recommended, that will tell you, based on your gut bacteria, we expect you'll have this level of histamine, this level of serotonin, this level of noradrenaline, whatever. Often I've looked at it with different people and be like, we expect that you'll have like 50 times as much histamine as average, or 20 times as much serotonin as average. So the variance is huge, right? If you have a lot of a certain type or certain types of bacteria, you can have way more than average. And of course, if you have way more than average of a stress chemical, and then you have leaky gut or intestinal permeability, that's a lot of that getting into your blood supply. And that's really going to affect how you feel. And so I tried not cyproheptadine, but another thing called metagoline, which suited me better, which is popular in the Ray Peat world, which increases dopamine and also decreases serotonin. And not only did it make me feel much better emotionally, all the rest of it psychologically, but it also made any IBS symptoms disappear. It's like, interesting, after all the things I've tried, that would be the thing. And just by, tweaking those neurotransmitters. So because of experience I'd had researching stuff again way before I started reading Ray Peat, I already had this idea that excess serotonin might be a bad thing, but I had no idea it might have been causing all of my IBS type symptoms. So that was hugely, hugely helpful.
Yeah, because you think, oh, serotonin, everybody needs so much serotonin. It's a calming neurotransmitter. If you don't have enough serotonin, you're not going to be calm. You're not going to feel happy. You're not going to feel all of this. It's another one of those.
It's often calming, right? If you're so depressed, you don't want to leave your house. You're less trouble to everyone around you.
Okay, fair enough.
So if you feel so full of despair, you don't want to get out of bed, you're, and I think that's a lot of it, right? If we're talking about social engineering, it's like, what makes someone so crazy that they're considered, that they have a mental health issue and sectioned and thrown in a psychiatric facility, right? Generally, it's because they're either a danger to themselves, because they've tried to kill themselves, hurt themselves, or because they're so bothersome to those around them that someone eventually says, we've got to get rid of them, let's put them away. That's basically it. A person could be going through all kinds of internal anguish, and so long as they don't actually bother the people around them too much, and as long as they don't actually attempt to, obviously directly hurt themselves, they just can carry on that way for years and decades, right? And so for people in those psychiatric institutions, often they don't fix them. They just give them, Thorazine or, or whatever the latest generation of that is, things to basically just numb them emotionally. And things that increase serotonin, whether it's SSRIs or 5-HTP supplements, are not that different. They will numb you. So if you are in a state of turmoil and upset and anxiety and, drama and overwhelm, will it calm you the hell down? Absolutely it will. But it will make you feel flat. It will make you feel, a lack of meaning, a lack of, enthusiasm for life, all the rest of it. And yeah, it can suddenly go a really bad direction, which is the danger of those things. It can turn you violent. It can turn you suicidal. It can turn you, it can disassociate you so much that suddenly, you start thinking that life is not real, it's just a video game, and start shooting people. I mean, that's the extreme side of being disassociated, is you can go too far into disassociation and then feel like, you're not real, other people aren't real, nothing is real. But if you disassociate people just enough, it'll shut them up and stop them bothering you. And maybe that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's also it's for me, when you shared that about this again, with Ray Peat saying serotonin is a stress chemical. It's like, oh, hang on a second. It's another way of looking at it. Yeah, the what if? Oh, maybe if it is this, then that. That's making sense. So that's what I've really appreciated on this journey. And you're absolutely right. The estrogen and progesterone thing would be mine for sure.
And the good thing is, it's not a theory that you have to debate endlessly in your mind. You can just try it, as I did, right? You can take lots of 5-HTP, see how you feel. Sometimes it's really, really bad, although generally not as bad as SSRIs. But I know, like, one of the people who I learned from, who's one of the pioneers of the peptide world, he said, a friend of his took 5-HTP once and went insane and never recovered. Like, these things do happen, although they're relatively rare, more common with SSRIs. But the easiest way to see it is take something that strongly reduces serotonin. If it's such a relaxation, wonderful, happy chemical, that should make you feel terrible, right? And yet, in practice, it actually doesn't. So that's what I think is interesting.
Yeah, because sometimes too, I have seen it where because if people have trouble sleeping, then they try to take 5-HTP to help with that.
I used to recommend it. Yeah. Absolutely. But it's the same thing, right? It's numbing you, it's calming you down in the sense of, stopping you from being so worked up, because it's putting you into this kind of disassociated state. Is a disassociated state preferable to a psychotic episode? Probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And on a practical level, is like a somnambulistic state better than a state of intense anxiety? Probably, right? If you've been through intense anxiety, then feeling all flat is an improvement. So, but just as we mistake, like a rush of adrenaline as being an improvement from depression, we probably, interpret like a shutdown, sleepwalking state as being an improvement of having a panic attack. And in each case, it is an improvement experientially, but it's not a resolution.
Yeah, good point. With everything that you have learned in your, getting to know Dr. Peat's research and, doing some of your research on your own within the things that he's shared, is there anything, or do you think that there's something like that he got wrong, or like the biggest thing in your opinion that he got wrong?
Yeah, well, no one's perfect. And time for, if I made any Ray Peat fans, I'll probably lose them at this point. But what I've observed is whenever there's a genius who kind of discovers stuff that no one else has thought of, they often get very fixated on that particular thing. And I've known people like that personally. I think you have as well, Chrissy. Buteyko, who I mentioned in a different segment, he was another example like that, and his followers. If you talk to a Buteyko follower, anything that increases carbon dioxide in the body is good. Anything that reduces it is bad. And they'll go to real extremes about that. They'll never overbreathe. They'll try not to talk too much. They'll never take a deep breath. They'll never breathe through their mouth. Some of them I know will fall asleep sitting up because it conserves CO2. They get really crazy in that direction. And this is really common, right? Like when people discover that, I don't know, eating a plant, they feel better eating a plant-based diet than a normal diet. Then they're like 100% no animal foods. And if you're doing that for a moral reason or whatever, that's fine. But it's not just fine. That's great. Good for you. But, people get extreme about things. So for Dr. Peat, it was all about speeding up metabolism, right? And the one thing that I think he got wrong that's significant that I've observed is he kind of simplified it to that which speeds up metabolism is good and that which slows it down is bad. Now, while I genuinely obviously believe that, and I've taught that in other episodes, like the episode we did on metabolism, there is a definite exception to that, which is poisons will speed up your metabolism. If you take a non-life-threatening but significant quantity of arsenic or mercury or asbestos or whatever, your metabolism will increase. Your core temperature will increase, your heart rate will increase. Those classic indicators of metabolism will increase. Does that mean you've benefited yourself? I would say no, of course. And in fact, Dr. Peat a lot of the time saw through people making that same mistake in different areas, right? Like we just talked about with serotonin, we talked about with estrogen, like we talked about stress chemicals. He could generally see, just because something raises stress chemicals, it doesn't mean it's actually a good thing. Now, what am I talking about specifically? Because people might be saying, when he was against all these things. Okay, let me be specific. Here's one example. Vitamin A or retinol. He was a big fan of retinol or vitamin A. I know he had personal experience where he had some kind of abnormal cell growth and he used a high dose of retinol and it went away. And I can understand when the person goes through that, they could, start to get very favorable feelings towards that particular compound. My understanding of why that might be the case is because retinol breaks down to retinoic acid, which can break down to 13-cis-retinoic acid, which is actually a chemotherapy agent. So it's not crazy that vitamin A would help with that, but is it a good idea to take a chemotherapy agent every day of your life? No, right? And so I won't do too much justifying about why I feel like vitamin A is a bad thing. We have a whole episode with that, which is the interview I do with Grant Genereux on how actually I believe most people have an excess of vitamin A, that it's toxic. Like high levels of vitamin A does reduce estrogen. I know it does various things other than increase metabolism, which Dr. Peat was a fan of. But as I said, I think it's more of a poison. I know this is going to be a lot more controversial, but I think coffee, at least in the quantities that he recommended it and used it, is a similar story. I'm actually surprised that he came to this conclusion. I think it must be due to his personal experience, not the science, because he was using a lot. I used to have a crazy amount of coffee and he was using even more than me. He would use like 30-40 cups or something a day, apparently, according to his own experience and according to his own testimony. Not that I was there, but that's what I've read him say. And there are beneficial things in coffee, but the main mechanism of action of caffeine, the main active ingredient in coffee, is by reducing adenosine, which is this, metabolism slowing, but also relaxing neurochemical. And so when you do that, it absolutely does increase stress chemicals. Now, he had ways of kind of trying to mitigate that. He would encourage people to have sugar with coffee or honey, a simple sugar. He would encourage people to have milk or MCTs in large quantities or cream, which would slow, the strength of the impact it has, just like the bulletproof crowd do these days. But I feel like, in some cases he was biased where he was recommending things that were poisons because, or at least poisons at the dose he was recommending them, because they obviously genuinely had a metabolism boosting effect. This is not a new thing, by the way. Throughout the ages, the wisest people in history have been doing this, mercury used to be commonly given as a medicine. Arsenic used to be commonly given as a medicine. I was not exaggerating earlier. That literally used to happen a lot. And I think it's for that same reason. And actually, maybe sometimes it worked. Maybe if someone is at death's door of an infection, give them a dose of arsenic, it would speed up their metabolism. Maybe their immune system would fight, their core temperature would go up. Maybe their immune system would start functioning better. They were able to fight off the infection and they would live. I'm not even against that. I'm not even against, I'm not saying that they were necessarily always wrong about that. But what I'm saying is it may work. It may save someone's life, but that doesn't mean it is a beneficial thing to have. It's still a poison, even if it's effective at boosting metabolism, even if that sometimes has a really profoundly healing effect. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen that I personally think that he got wrong. And you could extend it out to other things in terms of his dietary recommendations and stuff as well. I don't think everything that he recommended dietary-wise was beneficial for the same reason. But yeah, that's my opinion right now. Who knows? I may change it at some point. I don't think I'll change my opinion on vitamin A because of the extensive research I've done on it, but maybe on caffeine I will. I'm not as certain that I'll stick to that one. But I think, let's just say Dr. Peat is right about everything. Still be wary of assuming that everything that increases your metabolism is good for you. It may well be that you're trying something like, oh, wow, it's really increasing my metabolism. I feel great. just realize that maybe because it's poisoning you, you got to be wary.
Yeah, no, I was surprised about the caffeine because I know my own journey with caffeine of letting that go because I was not able to sleep at night. So that was something I definitely had to let go because it was just inhibiting that so much. And also, yeah, just with the anxiety or, feeding into that stress, which I'm trying to lower. So it just, was not heading me in the right direction of where I wanted to go.
So what he'd say to that is that that's a sign that your metabolism isn't fast enough and strong enough, and that you have to follow more of his advice. And so this is the thing where we can't be sure 100% that he was wrong until we have like a superhuman metabolism and try it for ourselves. I suspect he probably still is wrong, but that would be the thing. But what I don't appreciate is a lot of people, as I said, not following his metabolism boosting advice first and just starting to take lots of sugar, eat lots of coffee, consume loads of carbs, and then, gaining weight. I've heard of even people becoming diabetic, all the rest of it, because they're putting the cart before the horse, right? Got to optimize that metabolism first. Reduce the estrogen, reduce the insulin, increase your progesterone, increase your thyroid, increase your testosterone. Got to get all of that in a better place. Increase your carbon dioxide, like we talked about in an earlier segment. You've got to get all that in place first before you start taking a load of things that might be a poison to you. In the same way that you've got to get a lot of things in place before you start exercising harder than you should do. Who knows, maybe very strenuous exercise for hours a day is potentially beneficial, but you have to be in a really, really strong position to do that. Maybe lots of sugar and caffeine is good for you, but you have to be in a really strong position to have it be. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Rejuvenate podcast. If you want to watch the full episode that came from, just click on the link above. Or if you just want to watch our latest video, then click the link below. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you.